our comments have exploded through the roof. So there you go.
Good afternoon, Lancaster County. This is Lancaster Connects. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. It's 2 o'clock on July 13th, 2026, episode 255 of the Lancaster Connects podcast. I am joined, first I should introduce myself. My name is Ben McClure. If you've been watching, you know that.
Hello, Ben McClure.
One of your co-hosts here for Lancaster Connects. And I'm joined by Drew Blyle, sales manager here, or sales leader, I should say, here at Gardner's Mattress & More, which is the producer of Lancaster Connects. Mm-hmm. It's a way for us to give back at Gardner's Mattress & More, which is behind Park City Mall, 830 Plaza Boulevard. And Lancaster Connects is a show that allows us to give back to the community by having great conversations with amazing people, talking all things Lancaster. One of those amazing people is over here to my left. This is
way too kind.
Yeah, nationally recognized and record-setting genealogist Eric Schubert. Eric, welcome to Lancaster Connects.
Thank you both for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to dig into what you do in a little bit. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, this is like really cool. This is like cold case CSI. SVU.
Right, right. When you think of genealogist or forensic genealogy, I guess is the term. Yeah, you always think of TV and like. Mm-hmm. I know my brother worked on a show called Forensic Files.
Oh, a classic, right?
A show that, he was kind of behind the scenes there on that show back in the day. But yeah, there's a ton of shows about, forensics and genealogy. And I'm curious to know how you got into the industry when we have that conversation. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun having this conversation, learning all about what Eric does and how he got into it. So thanks for tuning in. One note here, Drew is filling in for Jeff Giannacovo, my co-owner of Gardner's Mattress & More and co-host of Lancaster Connects. He's taking care of his wife, Stephanie, today. She had another surgical procedure today. Hopefully all has gone well. Thoughts and prayers are with the Giannacovo family with that procedure there. And hopefully Jeff can join us back again soon. It's been great having you.
I was going to say, are you saying you don't want Drew here?
Well, that's what I'm hearing. But no, it's been fun. 3 in a row. I could put in for a daytime Emmy.
Special guest host.
Exactly.
There you go. Well, yeah. When we give out those awards, you're definitely in consideration. So, we've got a couple things that we like to do at the top of the hour here before we start our conversation here with Eric. One of the things we do is a mattress tip from the Gardner's Mattress & More point of view. So, Drew, I think you have something prepared for us.
Yeah. This is, of course, summer. It's not as miserable today as it has been, but wait till tomorrow and Wednesday and it comes back.
Are you talking about the heat?
I'm talking about the heat. 101 forecast high on Wednesday,
really?
Although not as humid. But either way, one of the conversations that is frequently brought in from consumers is not a misunderstanding about sleeping cool or sleeping comfortable, but it's a more complicated enterprise. Mm-hmm. Sleeping cool. What should I do? What should I look for? It's not a state secret that some people are hot sleepers. And there are certain materials in our industry that lend themselves to some heat retention. And there's others that are a little more breathable. And, marketing and the industry really dials into cooling technology, gel-infused foam, copper-infused foam. Those are all great mechanisms to help regulate temperature. However, one that gets overlooked because it's something that's not as common from store to store is also something that's more natural.
No.
100 years ago, a mattress was cotton and wool and horsetail in some cases and coils.
Natural materials,
which of course are usually very breathable. With certain types of foams used in the industry, some of them lend themselves to holding on to a level of heat. And where the industry used to kind of shy away from admitting that has now kind of acknowledged it and also said, hey, and here's what we've done to help work that out. So when we have someone that comes into the store and says, hey, I'm a hot sleeper, you need to show me something that has the most cooling technology in it. We can absolutely do that. We can absolutely look at that. But there's also another way to look at that. We could look at a bigger air conditioner in front of an open oven door, or we can turn off the oven. So there's two different ways to look at that. So when you're doing your mattress research and especially if you are a warm sleeper, I would almost say to to keep an open mind and also look at options that, again, use more natural materials. While they may not feel cold to the touch, they absolutely breathe well. We talked about bamboo sheets a few weeks ago. That also makes a big difference as well. But yeah, just a consideration in that if you're shopping for a mattress, natural is always a good way to go, and is always a temperature neutral material.
Yeah.
So
I love that. At the beginning of your tip there, you mentioned words like gel infused memory foam, copper, a bunch of others. These are buzzwords that the industry uses,
Yes.
right? And you see it all the time online. You see these words, but they don't mean anything online.
Right.
There's just it's marketing, right?
Exactly.
Now there's meaning behind what some of those materials are, but to get a true definition or understanding of what those are, that's why you come in here and talk to a sleep science certified sleep coach like Drew, and the rest of the team here at Gardner's. Chad and Phil do a fantastic job helping you understand these sleep technologies and what some of these buzz terms and industry jargon words mean.
I was just going to say, I'm learning something new today already.
There you go. How many more hours do you have after this?
Oh, we can go all night. It's fine.
Whole education.
All day.
All right. Last order of business before we get into Eric and what he does with genealogy. We've given Eric a task of, I'm not going to say what. Eric knows what it is. Producer Chris is going to bring it up here on the screen. This is the wheel of discounts. These are opportunities for savings here at Gardner's Mattress & More for our listeners and watchers of Lancaster Connects. Some of them are freebies. Some of them are dollars off a purchase. Some will even make a donation. If you come in, make a purchase, we'll make a donation in your name to a charity of your choice. But the wheel can't spin unless Eric does what he's been asked to do. So
I was going to say, I am honored then to say, let's spin that wheel then. Let's see what happens.
Round and round it goes.
Let's see what we land on. Oh, right in the middle.
This
wasn't that last week too?
I think that was free delivery last week.
You're right,
which we almost had again, but this is something new. It looks
This
like.
is pretty good. $129 value, free metal bed frame. This is the proper support underneath the mattress and the foundation of your brand new bed. One of the reasons why mattresses fail most often, or I should say more quickly than they should, would be lack of proper support underneath. So people that try to keep old box springs, people that have old bed frames that don't have the proper center support in it, those are reasons why mattresses might fail more quickly than they should, and having the proper bed frame helps. So yeah, come in this week, mention that you saw Eric spin the wheel here on Lancaster Connects. Come in within the next week to Gardner's Mattress & More, 830 Plaza Boulevard. Make a purchase of a mattress and a box spring foundation set, and we'll give you a free bed frame, $129 value. That was a good wheel spin. Eric.
I was going to say, thank you again for the opportunity. I mean, can I do it again?
How about next time we have you on the show?
Fair enough.
There
Fair enough. I'll hold my horses.
So, Eric, we mentioned at the top of the show, you're a nationally recognized record-setting genealogist. You've been featured on shows like CBS Mornings, Good Morning America, People Magazine. These are like big deal national publications and news programs.
Yeah, and it's funny. And at the time, I was just in college when I was doing that, so I didn't even realize kind of like, oh, like this is a national outlet
like
calling me.
How big of a deal this was?
I'm more focused on running to get to my history class because I'm 10 minutes late. Like,
right.
And then I'm like, oh, like People Magazine is calling me, GMA is calling me, and then I'm sending answers, whatever. I think the GMA interview I did, like I literally did it in like a quarter zip, like, fleece quarter zip, like, and sweatpants. Like, so I was definitely not getting the picture, but I'm very, very honored that I had those opportunities just because this topic is so misunderstood. So I think it's always good that, there's people out there, not just me, but people out there who can talk about it and, make it relatable and just educate on the topic.
It's so cool. I think I know. I want to know. I'm sure you want to know.
I was just gonna say, what is it?
How did you get nationally recognized? Like, what did you do?
It's almost like the mattress industry. There's like these buzzwords, right? So basically, it's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. So I was
an hour.
True. I'll keep that in mind. It's about 10 years old, homesick. Pretty just bored, annoying my mother. Typical stuff a 10-year-old would be doing if he was homesick. And my mom and I still argue about this to this day, because, of course, who sort of started this. But I was homesick, and somehow it came up between her and I, like
When you were 10.
when I was 10 and homesick, because I used to be homesick for like weeks at a time.
Gotcha.
I would get pneumonia every winter. It was,
no.
It was like clockwork.
Yeah.
So I guess the second or third time, my mom's like, okay, like, I'm not dealing with this kid for 2 weeks. And somehow it was
That's what my mom would've
suggested. And of course, I'm sure she didn't say that, but I'm sure that was the motive, right? Looking back 15 years later. And I somehow it came up like, okay, Eric, you love, history and puzzles and memorizing things, stuff like that. I saw a commercial for like a genealogy commercial. Like, here's my laptop. Like, sit on the couch and like, make yourself busy, pretty much, like have fun. So I'm sure she thought it would be like a 2-week thing, just to keep me busy during that time period.
Just to get you through, get you back to school.
That was like 15 plus years ago.
Okay.
So it very quickly, got out of hand in the best way possible. So I was just doing like traditional family tree stuff, as I'm sure you all can guess.
Kind of like the ancestry.
Yeah. Parents, grandparents, hey, here's my grandfather's, World War II card, draft card.
Which is pretty fascinating.
Exactly.
You can go back pretty far. And
I spent years on it. I mean, I still do. So it was just something that was fun. It was a hobby. And then, this is something, again, too, another part of the story that my mother and I also go back and forth about. When I was in high school, 14, 15, so now we're 4 or 5 years later, I needed a job. I'm from South Jersey. And when you're 14, 15, I should know how it is in PA, but I forget.
Yeah.
I've been here 3.5 years. I should know. But in Jersey, you can really only work at that age on the farm or at McDonald's.
Sure. Yep.
And I was like, I'm not doing either of those. Like, I'm just not feeling it. So again, somehow between me and my amazing mother, because I'm sure she's watching, I'll say that.
Shout out, Mom.
Exactly. Right. It was suggested like, hey, you've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years. Like, why don't you just like see if, the neighbors or people in the community are like interested?
Okay. Like in their own.
Exactly.
Ancestry.
So the same thing that I was doing for my family tree, my mom's like, okay, you've been doing this 4 or 5 years. You clearly are good at it and it's accurate. Like, why don't you see if there's interest? So somehow that came up and I thought, okay, this will just be, again, I'm not going to get a lot of interest. It'll just be a quick thing. It's not going to be fun. And then, I was like completely overwhelmed. And that was right when I was going into my freshman year of high school, and it just didn't stop. I mean, I've probably helped at this point, like, thousands of people find their heritage, and it all started in that time frame. So now this is a long story. I did jinx myself.
No, you're good. This is great.
But then to set the stage, here I am graduating high school.
Yep.
And then I'm reading in the news, 2017, 2018 about Golden State Killer case, which was actually announced on my birthday, which I thought was pretty funny.
Golden State being California.
Exactly. And it was a very widely known cold case in California, and they had solved it through genealogy.
Okay.
And I went, wait a second. So, building family trees and looking at DNA results, which is what I've been doing and helping people, it's the same exact thing as finding a criminal. So I'm reading this article and I'm like, okay, well, I'm 17, 18, so I'm probably not going to be able to work on the cold case, but like, that's really interesting that this is clearly going to be something that happens, and clearly like, I'm decent at it. So I just filed that away. And again, I was realistic, like, okay, I'm never going to get a phone call from a cop. I graduate high school, no joke. And now you'll see why I'm going through this chronology. It makes sense. I graduate high school that same week. I get a phone call randomly. I still don't know how they got my number from a police department. Like, hey, Eric, like, we know you do genealogy. Like, we've heard you're very good at like, now you've transferred over into like looking at DNA results. Like, those skills are transferable. Do you know that? I'm like, yes, I know that. So it very quickly, as you can tell, sort of just transpired from something that was to keep me busy to a hobby, to a high school sort of job. And then it sort of just became this international thing. So I'm very lucky, but I guess I owe it to Mom, right?
That's
always
so cool. It's super cool story. And there's so many different ways that we can take it. So how do you find the things that you find? Like, you don't need to share your secrets.
No, of course.
But I'm not going into the field of genealogy, but like, how do you, when like somebody hires you to dive deeper into their genealogy, their ancestry, where do you start? Like, how do you?
So I'll give you
find things
two
about
examples that are much shorter than the last thing I said,
Yeah.
but I wanted to give you that whole sort of timeline because it all kind of blends together well. I would say there's two main things I work on, and the one is more so the criminal side. Let's say someone wants a family tree. In my mind, that's super generic.
Yep.
Not a bad thing. It's just I can do it with my eyes closed at this rate usually, which I'm very lucky for. So
Yeah.
I say, okay, give me your parents' names.
Okay.
Maybe if you know your grandparents' names, let me know. But usually all it takes is just, I know the type of records like, okay, here are your parents' names. They were born, you're telling me they were born this year. They're going to be in these records. So I just go to that record to start. Like, for example, I think it's something like 92% of America has a parent or grandparent in the 1940 and 50 census.
Okay.
So if you give me your parent or grandparent, I just look them up in the census.
Okay.
And then I go, okay, there's their whole family and there's their father and mother. And then you can just repeat. Like, okay.
Then you go back.
I go to the 1900 census.
Yep.
There's this person's grandfather and they're with their father. Then I go to the 1880 census, and here's some great examples on the screen of some records. So it really depends on the case, but I would say censuses are, a big thing for sure. But it's just knowing where to look, and every case is not the same. But it's
all public record?
Public record. Okay. So everything that's publicly available. But you're basically just like starting from a parent, which I know sounds easier than it, it's a much easier explanation than it is, and just tracing backwards, one person at a time. And then on the alternate side, I get a lot of inquiries for people who are like, okay, can you help me find my biological grandfather? My mother was adopted.
Yeah.
So that was something in high school. I was like, okay, I'm starting to get requests for DNA.
Wow.
And then it really does sound cliche, but like genealogy, I sort of just picked that up too.
Yep.
Because I was getting those answers. But if someone gives me a question like that, of course, it also depends, but it might be like, okay, have you taken a commercial DNA test? Yes. Okay. Can you send me your match list? Yes. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it takes me 5 minutes. I look at it.
That's crazy.
I can, I can tell, like, let's say they're looking for their maternal grandfather. I can go, okay, well, these are all the father matches, and I don't want that side. And these are all the mother matches. And then I just go through them and I go, okay, this first person is on their grandfather's side. So every other person that they don't match with, I know is on the mystery line. So basically I'm just like isolating their matches. So like they give me a list of like 20 people who say, oh, I'm somehow related to these people. What I have to do is build those family trees of those 20 people and say, oh, 15 of them are descended from John and Jane Smith, who lived, 1890 in Lancaster. And then if that person doesn't have John or Jane Smith in their family tree, I can go, okay, I know all these matches are that mystery line. And then I can go, okay, did John and Jane Smith have a son? And, oftentimes it's easy, and maybe they had one son, and then I can go, all right, bingo, there's your grandfather. So kind of think of it, maybe a shorter answer would be it's like a big game of hot and cold, at least on the DNA side of it.
Yep.
And then on the family tree side of it, it's more just like starting with what you know, and then piecemeal, just trying to very basic, go back from one head of household to the next, from, the 1940 census to the 1910, 1880, and so forth. And then obviously other records may help you out. But usually, that can get you pretty far, because I say the number one red mark in genealogy, and why I'm harping on so much about this, is people overcomplicate it. And they're looking for things that aren't there. They're looking for things that didn't exist. And, they come to me and I'm like, and they're like, I was looking for my grandfather's birth certificate for 60 years. And I go, well, he was born in such and such state, and that county didn't even start to keep birth records until 25 years after he was born.
So these sorts of things.
So it's almost like a sixth sense, but people almost go too deep into it. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and go, just look at one census to the next, and don't get bogged down or confused in too many details. But I know that's much easier said than done. And I have some experience, but that's what I would say.
So, and I've got a personal connection here. So I'm adopted. I don't even know if you knew that or not.
Yep.
So closed file. March of 81. Older than I look. Haha. No, so like
We're both 25.
Not exactly. So not no, and I've never looked into this at all. But so where would I start, or where would you start with? Because I don't know a thing.
So that's so interesting. So in Pennsylvania, I know New Jersey just opened up their adoption records in 2017, 2018. I should know off the top of my head if Pennsylvania has theirs. So it's a 50-50 shot, and they're open and you could request them. But if they're not,
New York State.
New York State, it was actually a huge deal. They just reopened them in the last year or two.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted, you could request it, just your birth records.
Mhm.
But what I've learned is that's not always accurate. The amount of times I've gotten people's, original birth certificates from their adoption files, and unfortunately, all the information is wrong. Or, like the mother was lying, or, she put a father down that she thought was the father, and that wasn't the father.
Oh, wow.
So oftentimes, like in your case, I would say, go to New York Department of Health, you can request your records, but at the same time, do the DNA test, like an ancestry test,
So
because it doesn't lie.
So, and what's involved with the DNA test? Like, what do you?
You spit in a tube and send it off, and 4 weeks later, you'll get a list of people who you're related to. And then knowing that you don't know anything, I have a feeling your matches probably would be pretty decent. And then it depends, maybe in a day or maybe in an hour, I could be like.
And where do you go for the DNA test?
Typically Ancestry is a big one that I recommend. They just have a big pool, and they sell them on Amazon too for like $50.
Oh, so you request it, they send it to you.
Yeah, it's like
Send it off.
something you can order on Amazon. One day, comes with a return envelope. Very easy. And then same thing. I just look at the results. Like if someone's asking me to find their grandparent or something, it'd be the same thing here. Same thing with cold cases. I'm looking at people who match, and I'm just sort of reverse engineering. Like, oh, you have 2 matches who are the closest, and you share this amount of DNA with them, so the relationship has to be this, and there's only 2 people in the world in their family that could match that. So it sort of very quickly can come together. For sure. And I've had some crazy ones. I mean, it's funny. I've learned so much about human nature. Almost the cliches are true when it comes to this job, like the milkman being the father.
Okay,
I've had that multiple times.
Right. Wow.
The salesman, the traveling salesman. Like, I just laugh because I'm like, this whole time I thought those were jokes, and they're actually real.
Yeah.
Like I had one where
grandfather was a milkman.
Well, maybe when you take a DNA test, we'll find other people out there. Which I've had people say, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to take a DNA test because my dad was crazy." Which I of course I understand, but I would definitely say, go request it and take it with a grain of salt, because the DNA does not lie, and what's on there might be right, might be not. But either way, you can get it. And like I said, it was a huge deal. They worked for a lot of years in New York, I believe, to get those open.
Find that I'm related to Lord Byron.
Hey, let me know. You're preaching to the choir here.
So I want to talk about the technology side of this, because you're young. You grew up probably from your birth to now with a computer in your house, right? We grew up in an era where computers were new.
Correct.
Very, very new. And then I myself didn't own a computer until after college, which sounds probably pretty foreign to someone with your age. But I got to imagine, like, to do this sort of thing 30 years ago, even probably 25 years ago, you'd had to go to the library, look at, the Dewey Decimal System, like microfiche, right? You're looking through records in a different way now than you did back then. So how has technology changed for what you do?
Great question. Well, you nailed it, because people still are dedicated. Genealogy is the number 2 most popular hobby in America after gardening.
Interesting.
So I run across stuff all the time from like the 80s or 90s, when people were, writing books and writing, with their family tree information, and they're writing down where they got all the microfiche and, what libraries they went to. So pretty much how it's changed things is every record that's online, like every digitized record, like a census or draft card or like a marriage record, like what's on the screen now, it might have only been in a library or, hidden in a basement, and now it's all online. So you really don't have to leave your house to find a lot of these things. But at the same time, it just made it a little trickier back then, I would imagine, because you might not know where to look if you're, trying to find a certain record, and it's much easier sometimes to just hit search everything online instead of, looking at one data set over and over again, or until you find something new. So
Right.
I imagine it was a lot harder, but people did it. And it was going through microfiche. Going to the National Archives where censuses are stored. And then, genetic genealogy and, forensic genealogy didn't even exist until, the
Okay.
last 10, 15 years, which
Right.
that's kind of debated too sometimes. But
Gotcha.
the Golden State Killer case that I mentioned, that was the first big application. So not even the last 10 years, it's become a big thing. When I was working on a lot of my cases, because I've done other ones beyond some in Pennsylvania, it was very interesting to me because it was such a new field. You would have maybe one cold case genealogy announcement every 2 months, 3 months. Now you have, half a dozen a day. You turn on the news and it's, every single cold case is getting solved through genealogy. So I think that's a way, at least, it's transformed the criminal side of things in the last few years. And then, I can totally picture in the 80s genealogists, in the library basements. So I'm lucky I don't have to do that. Maybe I'm bragging a little bit, but I am very lucky.
You're right place at the right time.
That's a good way to put. I'm going to steal that. That's a good way to put it.
You're more than welcome to. This is a good segue because the national recognition that you got, and to be on like Good Morning America, CBS Morning Show, the People magazine, you solved a cold case.
Yeah. So I mentioned sort of when I graduated high school, I got asked to solve a cold case.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that whole few months, I was like, I really want to solve a case. But then when you actually get asked it, you're like, oh, wait, actually, do I want to get involved in this? I was 18. I was like, do I want to be involved in this? And then I thought, okay, like when you have 6 cops calling you, being like, please, Eric, work on this case, like, you're not going to say no.
Real quick, before you get into it, like what would the hesitation be to get involved?
My first thing was I was super eager, but then I was like, wait, I don't know what this is. Like, this could be a murder. This could be this.
Right. You don't know what you're
could be
getting
alive.
into.
Like, it could be very public. Like, I was like, is this even something I want to get wrapped up in?
Yep.
Is it going to be like a local thing? So that was my hesitation, at least initially. But then got it, solved the case, and then nothing happened. And I was a little jaded. And I thought, okay, there have to be more cases out there, especially in Pennsylvania, where you can actually get someone, have something happen. Like maybe someone's not arrested, but like they're named as the person who committed the crime, like if they're deceased. So I thought, okay, there's got to be more cases out there. I was asked once, let me turn the tables now. So I was in my dorm room one day and I literally just Googled, and it's funny, I remember it so vividly. I just Googled like cold case. And it had just so happened that week when I Googled it, the Pennsylvania State Police had just announced basically a new call for help with the Marie Chiavarella case in Hazleton, which is, I went to undergrad in E-Town. So it was about 90 minutes away. So it sort of came up first. And, I'm reading through the article and, to the untrained eye, it's a typical article. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, oh my goodness, like they tried genealogy. It didn't work. Like, they're scrambling right now. Like this is the perfect case that I can, want to work on.
So unasked, you kind of jumped in. And
exactly. So I said, all right, like,
research.
It was a young girl who was, murdered on her way to school. It was a terrible case. And I emailed and I said, hey, like, you probably get a lot of crazy people emailing you. Like, I promise I'm not one of them, maybe a little bit. I really want to work on this case. Like, here's my background. Like, I've done this before. And again, at this point, I'm 19, just turned 19 or barely 18. In college, first semester of college. And they got back to me and they're like, oh, thanks. And I went, shoot, I screwed it up. I blew it. And then 10 minutes later, they emailed me again. Eric, can we actually come down and meet with you next week?
Wow.
And I went, okay.
This is the police department.
Pennsylvania State Police.
State Police, okay.
So they came down and it was funny. I came prepared like it was a job interview. And I sat them down, and I don't know where I got the bravado at like 18 years old, but they sat down and I was like, okay, you're dealing with this case, your genetic matches are probably this distant. You've probably tried these techniques and, you've probably done this, this, and this, and it didn't work. And that's why you did that news article. And they're just sort of, interesting, whatever. And they asked me to buy a coffee. I said, no, thanks, but can you buy me an apple juice? So they got a kick out of that. And, I walked away thinking it was a good meeting. And they called me back and they said, how did you, a few days later, how did you know all that?
Did you know? Right.
They said, you guessed that the match was 63 centimorgans. It was 65. And they said, it's all yours. And then they gave me the case file. So
That's
it was
crazy.
just me sort of guessing what they've already tried to do and
But you
being
nailed
like,
it.
let me do it.
Yeah.
And I nailed it. And that's the only reason I got the case. So I think if I didn't do it that strongly, I wouldn't have impressed them.
If the genealogy portion that you had mentioned failed, what did you do that was different?
So this case was really, really, really hard because the match was so low and it was also Italian. So like when you're dealing with, John and Jane Smith, descended from the Mayflower, there's tens of thousands of people and huge family trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when someone's like first generation American or something like that, the pool for like DNA matches is much smaller.
Okay,
What's
right.
publicly available. So I basically just had to put way more time into it than, other people have. So I didn't know how it was going to go. We got so lucky. I mean, every single thing that had to go right genealogically, if that makes sense, that has never gone right before, like finding records in countries that I've never had luck with before, getting people to talk who, shouldn't be, typically would not talk, those sort of things all went our way, which was incredible. So like for this one, the big thing was, I sort of narrowed in on this Italian family, but I didn't have enough records to like know that I was looking at the whole family. I'm like, is this 10% of it, 100% of it? And as it turned out, there was a relative who lived in Italy for like 10 years in 1980 and did a whole family tree, and they were more than willing to send it to us. So it confirmed all the research.
Yeah.
Showed that we had everyone. And then, from there, I knew we were on the right track. So again, it took 2 years and there's a lot.
2 years.
It took 2 years. There's a lot more involved to the story than that. But just like, getting that family tree in Italy that I would never, ever usually have luck getting, got that. Like finding Italian birth records and stuff that I literally like have never even seen before or gotten before to this day, I found for this case. So it was just luck for sure. But we did it and people were willing to help. Thank goodness.
Yep.
No one sort of slammed the door in the Pennsylvania State Police's face, when we were working on this case. I had my amazing partner, Sergeant Barron and Trooper Q. It was funny. I literally had talked to both of them for like 2 years straight. And there I am at the press conference announcing this case. And
that's amazing.
There they are right behind me, the two men right behind me in the black suits. And there's Maurice's family up top.
Yep.
And I walked into the press conference and I was like, joking and joshing a little bit. And, Sergeant Barron's like, well, it took you long enough. And we're like brothers, so it's a compliment. So, 2 years of like emails and phone calls and back and forth and like, yelling at each other a little bit.
Sure.
It worked out.
But had you not gotten involved, this still might be an unsolved case.
Yeah, you never know.
And when did the crime, when was it committed?
I was just going to say the crime was March 18th, 1964. So it was when we solved it, 58 years, I believe, old. Now it's older than 60 years. It's the oldest cold case in Pennsylvania that's been solved through genealogy. And it's also, like I said, there's like new cases popping up every second. But last time I checked, it was top 4 or 5 oldest in the world.
Wow. Amazing. And it also made you the youngest to ever solve a cold case.
Yeah. And which a lot of people are genealogists now, and there's a lot of centers and people are getting into it for education, which is great. But yes, I am the funny enough, and I didn't realize this until after, I am the youngest person to ever solely solve a cold case, not attached to any agency or, college or something like that, just on my own. Very humbling experience. I can't believe I did it. I'm never going to forget it.
Yeah.
Maurice's family and I are like very close friends. We go out all the time. So I don't think my life would have turned out the way it did if I didn't.
That's amazing.
Take the punch to go work on that case.
And then how did, Good Morning America and People Magazine find out about this?
So it's like, I hate to use the word funny because it's not funny, but I do the press conference and I know, I'm very happy, 2 years, obviously.
Yeah.
But I remember my dad that day and my brother, they text me like, oh, is this going to be on TV? And even I was like, oh, like, I don't know. I do the press conference. I turn my phone on. It's blowing up. I'm getting pictures of me on TV. I have, the college that I went to emailing me being like, "Good Morning America is calling us. Please answer."
No way.
I had to tell them, "I'll handle it." Thank you, college. I'll handle it.
I got this.
So it was just something that I didn't really like. I knew it was a huge deal, but I didn't really think outside of like PA it would blow up. And again, I hate to use those terms, but I think if anything, it shows people how important this work is. It keeps Maurice's memory alive. It doesn't focus on the person who did this. Her family gets that closure, and people can find out what genealogy is. But yeah, I was just getting nonstop emails, including from People Mag and GMA. But even when I got those, I was just sort of like all compartmentalizing them into like just the billion emails I was getting.
Sure.
So I was treating like GMA like it was the local news too. Like I did the interview in sweatpants and like I think I had a fleece polo on, like just very like I was so tired. And then I looked
in a COVID outfit.
Exactly. But so I look back now and I'm like, I could have been a little more prepared maybe for the onslaught that I got. But again, I'm so lucky because it helped people understand what this is and why this is important and sort of how it works. And, you'd think after 10 years, I'm better at explaining how it works, but it's just like hours and hours and hours of research. I mean, I probably spent hundreds or honestly thousands of man hours on that case for over 2 years to have a result.
So a couple things.
Of course.
We're already like 37 minutes into the hour, which is just wild to me. On your shirt, ES Genealogy. I'm sure it stands for Eric Schubert.
I was going to say very original, right?
Let everybody know what you do with that and how they could contact you and what you can help them with. I think we have an idea, but I'd like to hear it.
After my ranting, for sure. So yeah, I decided, like I said, in high school to sort of make it a little more official. So ES Genealogy, like I said, very not generic at all for Eric Schubert Genealogy, but definitely family tree help, DNA help, genealogy questions, let me know. ESgenealogy.com is my typical site. I'm on Facebook, ES Genealogy. Love posting genealogy facts around town. I'll post the show today. But anyone has questions, definitely let me know.
Awesome. And something you're doing currently, W. Miller Barbour. I don't know anything about this individual.
I was going to say, so I sort of decided when I was in grad school that I needed to have like another hobby other than genealogy. Because someone asks you, oh, what do you do? Oh, what are your hobbies? I'm like, genealogy and genealogy. So I was like, I need to diversify a little bit. And I have a bachelor's and master's in history.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. I always enjoy researching, writing, presenting, and that's what I did all in undergrad. So I sort of decided, as I continue to be a genealogist, to continue also being a public historian. So W. Miller Barbour was a project I worked on when I was in college in undergrad. I was sort of given the task of figuring out who this guy was because the college archivist, probably about 10 years ago, was going through the old E-Town yearbooks and from like 1928, 1929. And he noticed that on this very, very exclusively white campus, there was one African-American in the yearbooks. And it was Miller Barbour, but he wasn't just in the yearbook. He was all over the yearbook. He was in the debating team. They had a football team for 1 year. He was on it. So that made him the first African-American college football player in Lancaster County, which he probably did.
Lancaster County?
Yeah, which he probably didn't even know.
Okay.
Yeah. And even though it was one season, he was mentored by the college president. So this was a guy who clearly was around town. So then flash forward to when I'm in school, I was given the task like, hey, you're the genealogist and you're also the historian. Like, let's figure out who this guy is. So myself and my friend, colleague, Abigail Sholes, we sort of put together the Barbour story. We contributed to the Barbour documentary that's out, that's having some showings right now in Harrisburg and Lebanon County and sort of all around Pennsylvania. And what we sort of did was we took our writing, which is going to be published in some academic journals, and we turned it into like a traveling lecture presentation to talk about W. Miller Barbour, because the second part of that story is he graduates from Elizabethtown and he basically becomes, Martin Luther King before Martin Luther King.
Wow.
And he is working for the National Urban League. He's meeting, W.E.B. Du Bois, who is, or I butchered that pronunciation, but who founded, the National Urban League.
Okay.
So he is constantly working for civil rights. He moved to Denver, was working with the mayor. He was constantly publishing,
Denver,
writing.
PA or Denver,
Colorado.
Okay.
He was on the mayor's commission, I believe, for human rights, it was called. So I had pictures of him with, government people, and he sort of was ahead of his time, because what he did was he was using celebrities, especially right before he died, to push his civil rights message. So he would have people like Glenn Ford and Dorothy Dandridge go to galas with him for the National Urban League and talk about civil rights and, equality in housing and things like that. But he died in 1958 I think he was 48 years old, before any of the Civil Rights Act stuff gets passed, before, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. So I'm doing all this research, and Abby and I are like, oh my goodness, this guy was doing everything. And he was on the same, vein and sphere as Martin Luther King Jr., but he died. And, his family, his wife had a stroke after he died, so she couldn't really honor his legacy.
Okay, right.
His daughter lived here in Pennsylvania, not out on the West Coast. So no one sort of picked up the Barbour mantle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why Abby and I decided to, turn it into something where we can go around and spread the word about how, it is a civil rights story, but it's a story about someone from our area who, in our opinion, got extreme recognition and did a lot of work, but
during his time alive,
and just sort of disappeared from the historical record. And, we thought he deserves more than that. So really, really lucky that it's been going well this year. The lecture series and Barbour's incredible career was actually just honored with the citation from the Pennsylvania Senate and the Pennsylvania House of Representatives.
Awesome.
So it's a passion, if you can't tell, but it's enjoyable because I got to do something else sometimes besides genealogy.
Yeah.
Even if this is, a little bit of the same thing, transferable skills, but it keeps me busy.
Well, that's awesome. The lecture series, how can we find out about where it is, when it is?
Thank you for asking.
Yep.
So you can go to espublichistory.wordpress.com. And just a little WordPress site where I put the link up with some of the dates. And I've added some new dates as well for the coming months. So I'm going to update that soon. I actually have 2 this week, so I'm very excited. I head out to Barbour's native Middletown, because he originally was born in Philadelphia and lived in Middletown before, spending time in E-Town and being in Lancaster County. He actually commuted between E-Town and Lancaster County and Middletown. And then on Sunday, I'll be at Thaddeus Stevens College. So really looking forward to that in Lancaster City. So it's just nice because Barbour sort of lived everywhere, even though he had a short life. He was in, Middletown. He was in Denver. He was in Lancaster. He was in Philly. So I feel like there's endless avenues to sort of talk about him. And there's also there's a reason to, it's sort of not a stretch.
Yeah.
He was breaking records in Lancaster County. He was breaking records in Dauphin County, but that's why he deserves the recognition, because I don't think he knew that at the time. He was the first African-American, college football player in Lancaster County. Probably didn't know that. Just so some of those things, he was one of the first, or we think possibly the first African-American students to graduate from Middletown High School.
Oh, wow.
Because I found an article when he graduated high school, the entire town threw a gala for him. So I'm like, okay, clearly they're not doing that for anyone. And it said he was, one of the first. So he was clearly breaking records, even if he didn't know it or not, but very, very passionate about sharing the story.
That's so cool. And I'm glad you shared some things that the audience can take away from the lecture. Like an hour?
Yeah, typically run about an hour. And I sort of I'm going to make them all a little bit differently. So I had a great one in Hershey about 2 weeks ago, and I sort of structured that around Barbour's time in Hershey. He actually worked in Hershey Hummelstown at a bar that got raided. So you can tell I can go on and on. He has a connection to everywhere. But I sort of tailor it to those communities that he influenced. So,
and is it free to attend?
Yes. Yeah. And some of them are by donation by the, because they're at historic museums and societies and stuff like that, but all are typically free. So it's a great opportunity to just learn more, like I said, about someone who is going to have national recognition, if all goes well. And he is getting recognition around the state. So
That's so cool.
yeah, someone who definitely will get maybe more into the public consciousness this year.
You wonder, and you may already have another story or 2 or 3 lined up to tell, but how many of these stories exist, these people exist that did amazing things and you don't know anything about them?
Well, you nailed it, because that's if you can't tell, that's what I love to do. And I think that's why I got given this project, is I love finding those underexplored type of stories, because, the more I research, or, the more something comes up, you realize that. My master's thesis, for example, was a biography on a Marietta businessman who also pretty much had little recognition. Found out he was the oldest active bank president in the country. He was on a regular basis with President Harding.
Mhm.
All the presidents of the Federal Reserve banks were calling him, wishing him happy birthday every year.
In Marietta.
Nobody
knows this guy.
And he was the president for 59 years of the First National Bank, and nobody really had a clue.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, Barbour, and this individual's name was Bar Spangler. So I was like, Spangler, there's so many of these where I'm not even looking for them. I'm doing something else, or I'm researching something else, and I run across the story, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I think it's very uniquely Lancaster County.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone will agree with this. I'm born and raised in South Jersey, and it's so different here.
Okay.
There's I think there's 22 or 23 historical societies and organizations just in Lancaster County.
Yeah.
So the amount of history that's shared and talked about and in the paper is constant. And I wasn't getting any of that in South Jersey. I feel like what I'm trying to say is the environment here is very conducive to historical research and sharing those stories. And, half the time people go, oh, that's my great-great-grandfather, because they know that off the top of their head, which I love. And again, only in Lancaster County.
Yeah. I love this, because in today's society, you can get famous for dancing funny on TikTok, right?
Exactly.
And
get famous for opening boxes.
Right.
Seriously.
And then they make more money than a lottery winner.
Yeah.
And you're out there doing research, finding these people who really, truly made an impact in their community for years over years over years. And you're bringing those stories to light.
I appreciate it.
Bringing them to people who should hear them. And shining a light on somebody's life. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. And I know it's, might not be everyone's cup of tea, but like I said, I enjoy it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Keeps me busy. And, I typically have a really great turnout at lectures and presentations. So whatever the topic may be. So I figure as long as people keep showing up, I'll keep doing them. So I agree.
Do you have another one lined up that you're kind of researching?
I have quite a few. Right now I'm working on, so I have Barbour and I have Spangler. Right now I'm looking into, but I don't know if it's going to become anything conducive, but I think it will. Don't want to spoil it, but a Lancaster book, but not focused on any particular person.
Okay.
So, and there's an opening there, and I just need to finish all the research and see if it's a go, and I think it is. So
that's cool.
More away from biography and more towards sort of generic Lancaster County history. I'll tell you guys after the show.
Well,
top secret. And
we would love to either announce it or discuss it, at least on this show.
You guys are way too kind to me.
That would be awesome.
I appreciate it.
You could be a 2-time guest on the show.
I'm honored that you guys find me that cool.
You're the first genealogist that we've had on after 254 other shows. It's interesting.
It is, and it's a fascinating field. At least I've always found it interesting, and I think it's also one that a lot of people don't really know. How does it work? It's easy to say, oh, I can just trace your roots,
exactly.
but what's involved with that? Like, to your point about going to all the looking at all the census information and then looking for different markers in your genetic make. Obviously it's a legitimate science.
Exactly.
But it fascinates me because I think there's so much that's not understood or misunderstood.
Oh,
and
nailed it.
That's the type of stuff I find fascinating when something is grossly misunderstood. Like, why is that?
And that's why I love rambling on and on about this, just because it is so misunderstood.
We'll have to have you come back for part 2.
That would be good. And I get the same questions over and over. I'm like, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. And just, the media a lot of times doesn't help,
Right.
especially with the genetic genealogy side of things.
Right.
But that's why, I love talking about this stuff, because you can just go on and on down all the rabbit holes. And I also recognize that everyone can't, sit there and go back and look at all the records. Like, they might not have the time, or it might not be their cup of tea, like I said earlier. So
I'm guessing
I
it
get that too.
requires an immense amount of patience.
It does. Sometimes I have to go and take a walk before I,
Imagine.
before I freak out a little bit. Yeah. If there's a toughie.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you're spending hundreds of hours sometimes.
Yeah, think
solving something.
Think like, locking the door, blasting the music, and it's like, all right, I'm not coming out of the office until I figure this out.
Yeah.
Now, are you working on any cases at the moment? I know we talked about the cold case you'd solved.
No, but I had quite a few independent cases besides Maurice's case, and outside of Pennsylvania too, that I'll name off real quick. I did the Lee Rotatori case in Iowa, which was a homicide. The Edna Lockman case, which was local in Gettysburg, Adams County area, and that was also for the Pennsylvania State Police. And I think I'm forgetting some others because it's been a few years. But
now, will you work on more than one at a time, or do you have to like fully dedicate to one case?
So I was, when I was doing these cold cases independently for quite a few years in college, and I sort of stopped after college because I realized it was becoming a very big industry. I was working on multiple cases at a time, or like, I would be working on Maurice's case for the state police, and they're called troops. Like another troop across the state would call me and be like, hey, we have this one. And there's some other ones that I just remembered that, have not even, nothing ever came of them. So I can't even rattle those off. But yeah, I was sort of just being like plugged in, randomly. But like I said, I sort of graduated college and realized, okay, this is becoming a big industry. I don't want to open myself up to anything wild.
Gotcha.
You see someone on the news saying, yeah, this guy's in prison and I did the research. Like, I like living here. I'd rather not tick someone off like that if it's a local case. So it's similar to like the first reaction I had when I got asked to solve a case. Is just protecting myself a little bit, of course.
100% makes sense.
No Amish mafia cases.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for sharing what you do.
Thank you for letting me go on and on and on and on. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thanks for telling your story. If you want to connect with Eric, website again?
Yeah, esgenealogy.com, and also espublichistory.wordpress.com, and also facebook.com/esgenealogy. I'm pretty active on all three.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you again.
And check out the W. Miller Barbour Lecture Series coming up.
Thank you.
Just Google him and you can find the information there. We're not done with you yet. We've got a few more questions. Connection Cocktail will shift into, and I'll kick it off. You just mentioned that you blast music while doing this. What music are you blasting?
So I'll give you a good answer, but I should have a more refined answer. So my taste really is all over the place, which I know everyone says. It could be like classical.
Okay.
We'll throw some Schubert on, which fits.
There you go.
Or, just something else. Or it could be like, some 1960s something.
Okay, so a little classic rock.
Some classic rock, exactly. I'll put on, my dad's, 80s rock playlist.
All right.
It depends. That's what I'll do if I need energy.
Okay.
If I need to lock in, I'll do the classical.
So depends on the
exactly.
mood.
Or my third answer, it could be a little more recent. It could be some chill Mac DeMarco.
Okay.
If you've ever listened, that's that's the only concert I've ever been to.
Okay.
So I would say one of the three typically, either some more recent stuff, chill stuff like Mac DeMarco, or classical, or we'll throw on dad's playlist. Exactly.
All right. Very cool.
It's probably our playlist.
Yeah, well, that's true. Gosh.
What did I tell you? You both are 25.
Thank you. Yes, you can definitely come back. And you live in Lancaster now?
Yeah, I've lived here for, oh my gosh, almost 4 years.
Okay. Do you have a favorite spot to go out to dinner, go out for drinks?
Oh, I do. And everyone knows this about me. It's my Achilles heel. Even everyone who works there knows it's become such a thing that I'm a regular. Lombardo's.
Oh, right on.
And Harrisburg Ave.
Yeah, Harrisburg.
Yeah, and I live right by there too, so it's very easy. And the bistro right next door that just opened up.
Brand new bistro.
Yeah, on first name basis, which is either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. So,
no, that's a great spot. They're
food is
friends
amazing.
of the family. We've known them forever.
Oh, I love it so much.
Spot. Do they still have the pepperoni sauce for the spaghetti? That's one thing they were always famous for back in like the 80s
Oh,
and
I
90s.
bet you. See, I haven't gotten spaghetti in a minute, but I bet you they do.
Okay.
And I know all they do is advertise the red sauce because it's
pepperoni
good. So
sauce.
they got to have the
That's-
pepperoni sauce.
That was my dad's favorite.
All right. If friends had to describe you outside of what you do in one word, what would it be?
I'd be scared to hear their answer. Let's say the last Barbour presentation I gave, everyone came up to me and they all said the same thing, and I noticed this. The word that they used, which I really much appreciated, was passionate.
Passionate. I was going to say
So I will take
energetic.
that.
I was going to say that or
passionate.
thorough.
Yeah. Very cool.
I appreciate it.
Very cool.
You guys are getting my ego too high today. I can't thank you enough.
Last question. America just celebrated its 250th celebration. From your view, what makes America so great?
I was thinking about this question earlier. I think my answer to this would be what makes America so great, at least in my opinion, and this is going to be a little bit of a history genealogy answer. So maybe it's a cop-out.
That's all the time we have for today.
What I would say would be just the fact that there's so many stories out there to be shared.
Yeah.
That we've had 250 years of history, and yet I feel like we've probably only touched sharing 10% of it.
Yeah.
So there's people like Barbour and Spengler and everyone else out there
Mhm.
who, you can keep researching. And then you realize there's so many people who've done incredible things in America, who have contributed, who have, contributed to Lancaster County or the nation as a whole. And, maybe that hasn't been recognized. So sometimes I stop and I'm like, you know what, these are the people, of course, that America was founded upon, their backs. So again, that's a little bit of a historian cop-out answer, but
No,
I do always think about that.
It's great because you're telling stories. I mean, you're telling W. Miller Barbour's story. You're telling stories of people who mattered.
Yeah.
That nobody knows about.
Exactly.
Other than maybe their family.
And because there's so much history to cover, I mean, things get lost or things don't get covered as thoroughly. I'll use your word now. So I feel like, obviously you can do that probably in every country, but I feel like some of these stories are so uniquely American.
Yeah.
Like I'll leave you with one. Bar Spangler, who I did my thesis on, his whole thing was he did not drink. He was a temperance person. And I found this story where someone gave him a jug of whiskey and he waited until they were out of eyesight. And then he got an axe and he totally destroyed the jug of whiskey. So I just feel like it's so uniquely like Lancaster County and American. So when I read like old newspaper clippings and I'm doing research, I think some of this stuff you're just not going to find anywhere else but in America.
Yep. Love it.
See, I don't trust anybody that doesn't drink. Old grandfather joke.
He lived to 100 years, but I don't know. You're telling me he never took one sip of anything? I don't know.
I don't know.
Some that don't.
Very principled individual. Eric, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on Lancaster Connects. We say this every time. It's like we're almost at 3:00. It's like hour just goes by like
time
that.
flies when you're having fun.
Time flies. All right, we've got time for a testimonial here. Again, Gardner's Mattress and More is a producer of Lancaster Connects. Gardner's is the business that I co-own with my partner here, Jeff Giannakavo. And we're at 830 Plaza Boulevard, right behind Park City Mall. Help you wake up happy every morning. And we had a review come in within the last 24 hours.
Oh.
And it features you, Drew.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
How many stars? Half.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
All right, you've earned it today.
5-star. So Cheryl, recent customer, returned after 7 years to take my mother to meet Drew.
Oh.
So she could
Cheryl.
select a new mattress.
They were so much fun.
The second experience was just as good as the first. And Drew doesn't go for the hard sell. He truly helps you figure out what you want in a bed to make you more comfortable. We have been very pleased with our purchase. So thank you for doing what you do every day.
And thank you, Carol and Cheryl. You guys were awesome to work with. That was, what's today? It was yesterday.
So she
Super
purchased
fresh.
yesterday.
So they went home and so thank you. If
Very
you're watching,
nice.
thank you for that very much.
Yeah.
It was great to see you again, Cheryl.
It looks like Chris has got the fire. Oh, he had the fire thing highlighted there. Yeah. So great review. Thank you, Cheryl, for your business. Cheryl and Carol.
Carol is the mother.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you, Drew, for doing what you do here
My
at Gardner's. Drew and the team here can help you wake up happy every morning, just like we did with Carol and Cheryl. Right there on that testimonial. So, Eric, again, thank you for being on Lancaster
Thank you
Connects.
both.
This has been amazing. Drew, thanks for sitting in for Jeff.
Yeah.
Prayers for Jeff and Stephanie with what they're going through there. Hopefully today's was a quick little procedure and you can get on with normal life again. So appreciate everybody listening and watching. Again, 2:00 Mondays, you're listening and watching Lancaster Connects right here on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever else you might catch your podcasts. Again, thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the
next
next
week.
connection. Thanks.
Comments have exploded through the roof. So there you go.